Hello, so in this lesson we're going to be talking about converting from decimals to fractions and percentages. Our learning objectives are going to be connect fractions, decimals and percentages and carry out simple conversions. So as I said, in this lesson we're going to be starting with a decimal and then from that decimal turning it into a percentage and turning it into a fraction. So let's begin by looking at 0.2. How could we turn 0.2 into a percentage? Well, the way that we do that is simply convert a decimal to a percentage, multiply the decimal by 100 and attach a percentage sign. So this is done by moving the decimal 2 places to the right. So we could write this down here. So I'm going to take my decimal and I'm going to multiply it by 100. And when I'm doing that, what I'm doing is I'm taking my decimal and I'm moving it twice over. So that means what I'm going to end up with is 20%. 20%. So I multiplied by 100 and I then attach the percentage sign. Perfect. Now, how do I turn a decimal into a fraction? Well, the way that I do that is to convert a decimal to a fraction, use your knowledge of place value. Express the decimal as a fraction whose denominator is a power of 10. Remember to simplify the fraction whenever possible. So if I have 0.2, using my knowledge of place value, I know that my 2 here is in my tenths column. So that means it's simply 2 over 10. I can then simplify this. I know that when both of these are divisible by 2, so 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So just like that, I know that my fraction is going to be 1 over 5. So that the way you turn a decimal into a fraction relies on your knowledge of place value. Perfect. Hopefully everything here made sense, and let's now just consolidate what we've learned by going through some more examples. So let's begin here. We have 0.4, which is a decimal. To turn that into a percentage, what we do is we take 0.4 and we multiply it by 100, which means I'm just going to move that decimal place twice over. So I'm going to end up with 40%. 40%. And I also know that 0.4, my 4 there is in my tenths column, so it's going to be 4 over 10. I can then simplify that, so I can divide them both by 2. So I'm going to get 2 over 5. So that is going to be my answer as a fraction. Let's now go into our next one. In order to turn this decimal into a percentage, I'm simply going to multiply it by 100. So I take 0.36, I multiply it by 100, and when I multiply something by 100, I'm moving the decimal place twice to the right. So that means I'm going to be left with 36%. If I now want to turn this decimal into a fraction, I use my knowledge of place values. So I know that 0.36 will be 36 over 100. I then simplify when possible. Both of these are divisible by 4. 36 divided by 4 is 9, and 100 divided by 4 is 25. So that means I'm going to be left with 9 over 25. Let's now come to our next one. We have 1.6. Again, we follow the same protocol. To turn this into a percentage, we simply multiply it by 100. So that means I'm going to end up with, let's take our decimal and move it twice over. So it will be 160%. In order to turn this into a fraction, what I would first realize is that I have one whole. So I know I have 1, and then this 6 is in my tenths column, so it's going to be 6 over 10. I then can simplify this 6 over 10 to both of those are divisible by 2, so I'm going to get 3 over 5. So my answer will be 1 whole equals 1 whole and 3 over 5. Let's now move on to our final slide here, where we will wrap this up. Here it is. So if I want to turn 0.239 into a percentage, all I do is I move my decimal place 2 over. So that means what I'm going to be left with is 23.9%. If I want to turn this into a fraction, what I do is I simply use my knowledge of place value. So it's going to be 239 over 1000. Now, how do I know it's over 1000? Because my 9 here is in my thousandths column. So I know it's going to be 239 over 1000th. Let's keep on going. So if I want to turn this decimal into a percentage, what I do is I multiply it by 100. So I move it twice over. So it's going to be, this is going to be it's going to be 1035%. If I want to turn it into a fraction, what I would do is realize that I have 10 wholes. I have 10 wholes, and then I have 35 over 100. 35 over 100. So that means I can go, all right, 35 over 100. I'm going to divide them both by 5. Actually, let me just do this instead of doing that. Let me go divide this by 5, and that will become 7. I'll divide this by 5, which will make it 20. So I'm going to be left with 10 wholes and 7 over 20. Let's now do the very last one. Let me just fix up that 0. So if I have 7.45, I'm going to turn it into a percentage by moving my decimal place twice over. So it's going to be 745%. And then in order to turn it into a fraction, I'll realize that I have 7 wholes. So I'll put a 7 here, and then 45 over 100. 45 over 100. I'll then simplify when possible, which is dividing both of these by 5. 45 divided by 5 is going to be 9, and 100 divided by 5 will be 20. So that means I'm going to be left with equals 9 over 20, and that will be my answer. So let's just wrap this up by reminding you that you need to memorize some fractions to make your life easier. You should know off the top of your head what 1/5, 1/4, 1/3, 1/2, 2/3, 3/4, 1. All of this should just be in your brain at all times. You should also know if I asked you, well, what's 2 over 5 or what's 3 over 5? What is that as a percentage and a decimal? So make sure you spend time just committing this to memory. Now, I lied. Here's the final slide right here. This is just a summary of what we've learned in the last 3 lessons, all about converting fractions, percentages, and decimals to each other. And as you can see, this diagram shows you how to go from a fraction to a percentage, and then from a percentage to a decimal. In our very first video, we talked about how to go from a fraction all the way to a decimal. And I think you can appreciate that that is kind of a hard move. Sometimes it's easier to first turn it into a percentage, and then once it's a percentage, turn it into that decimal. But you just need to do whatever works best for you. If you think it's really easy to go from a fraction to a decimal, go for it. But if you first want to turn it into a percentage before you turn it into a decimal, do what works for you. All right, I lied again. This time, this is the last slide. I promise this time I'm not lying anymore. So what have we learned in this lesson? We have learned how to convert decimals to fractions. We absolutely have. Use your knowledge of place value, express the decimal place as a fraction whose denominator is a power of 10, and simplify when possible. And we've learned how to convert decimals to percentages. You simply multiply the decimal by 100 and attach a percent sign. Hopefully this lesson has been clear and you get it. Good luck with your exercise, and I'll see you in class.